The rain tapped softly on the window pane of a small candlelit flat in Whitechapel. Inside, Margaret Holloway, a grief-stricken widow in her late 40s, sat hunched over a séance table, her trembling hands clutching a silver locket. Her eyes, sunken and rimmed with sleepless sorrow, never left the flickering candle at the table's centre. She whispered her husband's name again and again. "Thomas, please, if you're there, speak to me." Behind her, the room remained deathly still, the only sound being the occasional creak of old wood under the weight of time. Then, the candle's flame grew tall, stretching unnaturally upward before flickering out. In its place, a cold mist coiled from the base, snaking around the room like smoke made of whispers. From the center of the smoke emerged a form, soft, indistinct, but heartbreakingly familiar. "Margaret," it said, in Thomas's voice. Her breath caught. She leaned forward. "Thomas, oh God, is it really you?" The form reached out a hand. "Come, my love, just one step closer." Tears spilled down Margaret's cheeks. She rose slowly, drawn by the illusion of comfort. She stepped forward into the veil of smoke and vanished. Beyond the veil, the air shifted. The warm, candle-lit room was gone, replaced by a chilling expanse of grey fog and muted shadows. A ghostly forest twisted and groaned under a sky that never turned day or night. Shapes danced in the mist, illusions, echoes of lost moments. Margaret stood in the centre of a cobblestone path, confused. The form of Thomas had vanished, replaced by a long, winding road, leading to a crumbling manor, suspended over a black abyss. From the shadows stepped a figure, draped in velvet robes, the colour of dried blood. His skin was grey and cracked like aged parchment, eyes glowing faintly blue with the light of 1,000 stolen souls. He smiled, revealing sharp, 2 white teeth. "Welcome, dear heart." Margaret gasped. "Where am I? Where is Thomas?" The figure tilted his head, eyes glinting with amusement. "Your beloved. You followed the voice of memory into my sanctuary. I am Lord Verrowe, keeper of the soul-thin realm. You sought the dead, and now you join them." Before she could scream, spectral chains slithered from the ground, wrapping her limbs in silence. Her mouth opened, but no sound escaped. Her body faded, becoming a silhouette of smoke, and then vanished into the swirling winds of the Ghostrealm. Lord Verrowe turned and walked through the dead forest, each step renewing the decaying trees and broken skies. With every soul that entered, his power grew. The realm was no afterlife. It was a prison, stitched together by misery and longing, fed by the emotions of the damned. His victims remained, not as themselves, but as fragments, echoes, their pain an eternal harvest. Each whisper of regret, every pang of grief was a morsel for the realm to consume, and in turn, it fed its master. Lord Verrowe had not always been a monster. Born in 1463 to a noble family in northern France, he was a prodigy of occult study, his talents discovered in the crypts beneath the Abbey of Montfaucon. It was there he first spoke with the dead and felt the cold hand of the void caress his spirit. Cast out by both church and kin, he vanished into legend. But he had not died. In secret, he performed the ritual of the binding breath, offering his mortal soul to the nether beyond in exchange for dominion over what lies between life and death. And from that pact, the soul-thin realm was born, a hidden domain shaped by sorrow, sustained by the departed who wandered too far in their search for closure. He did not hunt. He lured. Through seances, haunted dreams, and whispered promises in the dark, he became the echo of every lost voice. And when the grieving reached out, he was there to pull them in. The realm hungered always, and Verrowe fed it, and was fed in return. He paused at the balcony of his manor, gazing over the ever-stretching fog and forest of faded souls, smiling as Margaret's essence joined the eternal chorus. "Another note in the symphony of sorrow," he whispered, and the mist curled tighter around his throne. The soul-thin realm groaned. Grey fog churned sluggishly, and the sky, once an endless dome of static twilight, began to flicker with strange pulses of shadow. Lord Verrowe stood in the centre of his manor's great hall, his skeletal fingers pressed to a cold, obsidian wall veined with cracks. He recoiled, coughing, a sound dry and pitiful. His once vibrant robe hung loose around his wasted frame. The faint glow in his eyes had dimmed. The forest outside no longer responded to his will. Leaves had begun to fall, brittle and dull. "This is not enough," he snarled, voice echoing across the empty corridors. "I need more." He staggered forward, leaning heavily on his ornate cane. Each step dragged. "As the world evolves," he spat, "fewer place their faith in the spirits. The foolish no longer call to the dead as they once did. I am starving for souls." He slammed a hand against the wall. Dust fell like ash. "I must venture into their world. I must find a way to bring the souls to me, or fade into oblivion." At that moment, something in the air shimmered. A slit, no longer than a dagger's blade, appeared mid-air, a jagged wound in reality, faintly glowing with the light of the mortal world. It hissed like a living thing. Verrowe approached, breath quickening. He placed his hand upon it, and the veil parted. He stepped through. Night in the mortal world. A narrow London alley, slick with rain. A homeless man shuffled along, muttering to himself beneath a thin blanket. The rift tore open silently behind him. Verrowe stepped out. A relic of centuries past, robed in velvet and shadow, his boots silent against the wet concrete. His presence brought with it the scent of dust and decay. The man turned, startled. Verrowe reached out. His ghostly hand passed through the man's chest, pulling from him not a soul, but the sensation of warmth, of life. The man collapsed, unconscious. Verrowe stood above him, sneering at the coarse, modern clothes. He crouched and began to strip the man of his garments, slipping them awkwardly over his ancient frame. Moments later, he stood beneath a flickering street lamp, clad in ill-fitting jeans and a tattered hoodie. The clothes hung oddly from his skeletal figure, but he pulled the hood over his head and began to walk. Passers-by barely noticed him. To them, he was just another aged man lost in the streets. But there was nothing living behind those pale, flickering eyes. He looked up at the skyline of the waking world. "Let them hide in their noise and light," he whispered. "I will find them. I will take them, and they will feed my realm once more." The fog of his home realm trailed faintly behind his steps, disappearing into the cracks of the waking world. Thunder rolled above the twisted spires of Thornwood Manor, nestled deep in a forgotten woodland where the modern world dared not linger. Beneath the surface, through stone halls and shadowed stairwells, a hidden laboratory pulsed with dark energy and scientific brilliance fused into one. Stephen Lestat stood beneath a hanging iron chandelier, its wax-dripped candles casting long, flickering shadows across his laboratory. Blonde hair swept back from his face, his chiseled jaw set in focus as he leaned over a slab of obsidian etched with sigils few dared speak aloud. Worn gloves covered his hands, stained with reagents both chemical and organic. The lab was a mix of brilliance and horror. Shelves lined with anatomy journals, beside crumbling tomes of necromantic rituals, preserved specimens next to rune-carved skulls, and tubes pulsing with unnatural light. Vats hummed with life or something near to it. A portrait on the far wall watched silently. The stern face of Edgar Thornwood, Stephen's uncle and the former master of the manor, stared with eyes forever locked in secret. His expression was unreadable, but his presence in the room was palpable. Edgar had vanished decades ago, leaving the manor and all within to Stephen and his mother, a woman now long dead, her ashes still resting beneath a black urn engraved with death's mark. Stephen worked alone now. His genius in biology had taken him far, once praised by academics, until his work grew unorthodox. He had gone deeper than any before him, mastering both science and sorcery, becoming something beyond mortal understanding. Tonight, he was reanimating something small, a raven stripped to bone, with sinew drawn from the ether. His voice echoed low, reciting ancient syllables, even as his scalpel etched precise cuts into the bone. A violet glow shimmered through the veins of the bird's corpse. Then he stopped. A wave of cold washed over him, not of temperature, but of essence. The laboratory's candles flickered as though startled. Something ancient had stirred. He stood upright, eyes narrowing. He felt it. "Someone is disturbing the cycle," he whispered. He closed his eyes, extending his awareness into the cracks between realms. The stench of corrupted souls flooded his senses. Death was being siphoned, stolen unnaturally, not by accident, by intention. The energy was powerful, steeped in suffering, controlled. Stephen stepped back, exhaling. "This is not mortal," he muttered. "Someone has found the seams and is feeding from them." Was it a rival, a threat to his work, or perhaps a kindred spirit? His gloved hand reached for a ceremonial dagger, its blade shaped like a serpent's tongue. He held it tightly, staring into the void that pulsed at the far corner of his lab, a gate he had yet to open. "If this force serves Necros, god of death," he said softly, "then it may be an ally." He turned to the portrait of Edgar Thornwood. "Is this your doing, old man? Or have you sent me a gift?" Whatever it was, it had stirred the attention of Stephen Lestat, and he would follow the thread, even if it led him to hell itself. The night swallowed the city in silence. Lord Verrowe walked beneath the flickering lamplights, his steps slow, deliberate, as if the very ground whispered secrets to him. Clad in stolen rags, the form of a frail old man masked the monstrous truth beneath. His eyes, glowing faintly through the shadow of his hood, darted left and right with growing urgency. He paused in a narrow alleyway, surrounded by brick walls slick with moss and rain, and there he felt it, a ripple, a tremor in the very weave of existence, a pulse unlike any soul he had consumed. It was raw, ancient, brimming not just with sorrow, but with purpose. Verrowe inhaled deeply, the breath catching in his throat like fine wine. "I feel you," he rasped. "A soul of Necros himself, anointed, ancient, potent. Your essence will feed me for years to come. His lips curled into a twisted grin. And I shall savour every moment. He turned, his body moving with new hunger, following the invisible trail left by the disturbance. Each step brought him closer to Thornwood Manor, a place soaked in forgotten rites and buried lineage. Beneath the earth, within his laboratory, Stephen Lestat pulled on a heavy coat lined with dark leather and silver stitching. He slipped his fingers into a bracer etched with necrotic runes, tightened the straps, and cast one last glance at his Ravencraft creation, now resting silently in a glass chamber. The pull grows stronger, he murmured. Whoever you are, you're drawing on death like an open wound. He turned toward the stairwell, ready to ascend and leave the manor, when knock, knock, knock. 3 sharp raps on the heavy wooden door above. Stephen paused. He hadn't received visitors in years. His eyes narrowed. Curious. He climbed slowly, every sense on alert. As he unlatched the door, a gust of cold air rushed in, carrying with it the scent of damp stone and something older. Decay. There stood a hunched figure in a long coat, his face partially shadowed beneath the hood, yet even hidden, the faint shimmer of unnatural light flickered in his gaze. Evening, the figure croaked. I apologize for intruding. I am a traveller, one who walks in death's shadow. I felt a kinship and followed it here. Stephen's brow furrowed. His voice remained calm. Is that so? The figure smiled. Teeth too perfect, too white. I go by Etrigan, and you're Lestat, yes? Nephew of Edgar Thornwood, a legend in his time. Stephen said nothing, but stepped aside. Come in. Verrowe entered slowly, eyes scanning the laboratory with a mixture of hunger and admiration. The air was thick with magic, rituals half finished, and experiments locked in stasis. Stephen folded his arms, watching the man carefully. You knew my uncle? In passing, Verrowe lied smoothly. Our paths crossed in the deeper places. I thought him insightful, and perhaps now you walk further than even he dared. Stephen tilted his head slightly. What do you want? A proposal, Verrowe said, his voice low and tempting. We are not so different, you and I. 2 practitioners of forgotten knowledge, but the world has grown cold to our kind. Together, we could build something more. Stephen raised an eyebrow. You speak of an alliance. Verrowe nodded. A realm shared, a gate between yours and mine. We could feed it together. Souls split equally, knowledge exchanged. You of science, I of spirits. A beneficial arrangement. Stephen said nothing for a long moment. He could sense the lie beneath the offer. Verrowe's soul was riddled with deception, a maze of betrayal, but deeper still, woven in the man's very being, was something real. Death, not just as a concept, but as a presence. Stephen heard the faintest echo of Necros, like a whisper in his mind, a pull, and not of fear, but destiny. Will you offer a portal? Stephen asked finally. Verrowe smiled. I can open the veil. Let you see what most mortals never will, the soul-thin realm where death breathes. Stephen narrowed his eyes. He knew it was a trap, but he was no mere mortal. He bore the favour of Necros, and in the black heart of Death's dominion there was power waiting to be taken. I accept, Stephen said. Verrowe bowed slightly. Then let us begin. He stepped to the centre of the lab, dragging a clawed finger through the air. A soft rip echoed like silk tearing. A slit opened, a jagged wound in space. glowing with cold light and whispers from beyond. Fog spilled into the room. Stephen tightened the bracer on his wrist, drew his coat close, and walked beside the creature that meant to devour him. They stepped through together, and the veil closed behind them. The portal sealed behind them with a final hiss, as if reality itself exhaled its last breath. Stephen Lestat stood tall, eyes slowly adjusting to the grey-tinted gloom of the soul-thin realm. The air was thick with grief and cold memory, the sky above a muted smear of shadows, the ground cracking with the silent screams of 1,000 trapped souls. Verrowe, now fully in his element, let out a low, triumphant chuckle. It soon broke into open, mocking laughter. "Oh, for one so powerful," he sneered, circling Stephen like a spider. "You are so easily led. You stepped through willingly. Now you are mine." He raised his arms, the folds of his coat fluttering like the wings of some skeletal bat. "This place will drink your essence slowly, deliciously, a soul infused with Necros himself. Ah, you will sustain me for many years to come, you fool." Stephen said nothing at first. He simply looked around. He felt it, down to his very core. The entire realm pulsed with death, not as a concept, but as a structure. Souls wailed beneath the soil, whispering in the wind, drifting like ash through the air. He understood now. This place was built on agony, carved from the essence of those lured to their doom. He turned to Verrowe, his expression unreadable. "Indeed," Stephen said calmly. Verrowe's grin widened. With a snap of his fingers, the very fabric of the realm responded. From the ashen ground, the spectral chains erupted like vipers, hissing through the air, coiling towards Stephen with hunger in their spectral eyes. "Feed!" Verrowe commanded. The chains struck, but just before they wrapped around him, Stephen lifted his hand, palm glowing with necrotic energy. His voice echoed like a command from beneath 1,000 graves. "I think not." The chains shattered into dust. Verrowe recoiled, eyes wide, the confidence melting from his face. "Impossible!" Stephen took a step forward. The fog shifted around him like a cloak obeying its true master. "This place is death," he said, his voice low and laced with power. "Fueled by death, forged from death. Did you think Necros held no dominion here?" He raised his hand once more. The ground trembled. Cracks spiderwebbed through the cobbled path. From the fractures, hands emerged, rotted, clawed, grasping. The dead rose slowly, their hollow eyes glowing faintly with a will not their own. Only 5 emerged. Stephen didn't need more. "That will suffice," he whispered. Verrowe backed away, snarling. "You think you can challenge me in my realm?" Stephen smiled. "I'm not here to challenge you, Verrowe. I'm here to take what you've stolen. The powers you used to build this place. The siphons, the rituals, the soul anchors. I feel them all. They're crude, but useful." He stepped closer, the risen dead falling in behind him like loyal shades. "Let's talk," Stephen said, his voice now like cold iron. "About what you really know. About the magic you used to anchor this prison. Because I think your work will serve me and my master very well." The wind howled through the soul-thin realm. Verrowe no longer smiled. The silence of the soul-thin realm was broken only by the soft groaning of the earth beneath Stephen Lestat's boots. His summoned dead stood behind him, weapons drawn, their presence stabilizing the thrum of necrotic energy around him. Verrowe had vanished, but Stephen believed he had the upper hand. He stared into the swirling fog. "You underestimated me," he said aloud. Then a slow, deliberate clap echoed from the mist. Verrowe stepped forward, his pale lips twisted into a smile, far too calm for a man who should have been cornered. "Well done, Lestat," he said, his voice laced with something new. Not fear, but respect. "You have lived up to your uncle's name. Edgar would be impressed. And yes, Necros is with you. That much is clear." His smile widened unnaturally. "But there's one thing. Necromancer. You're in my realm." Stephen narrowed his eyes. Verrowe's voice darkened, his arms outstretched as he gestured to the very air around them. "Each moment you dwell here, this place feeds off you. Can't you feel it? The slow drain, the shift of power. This Ghostrealm, my realm, is feeding." Stephen's brow furrowed. "I can feel your strength," Verrowe continued. "So cast, so brilliant, and I can feel it bleeding into the stone, the air into me. You don't have long, Stephen. Soon you'll be too weak to resist, and then I'll feed on what remains." Stephen clenched his jaw. He could feel it, a steady siphoning, like his blood being pulled through unseen roots. The realm itself drank from him, and Verrowe's presence now shimmered brighter in its wake. "Undead, attack!" Stephen snapped. His 5 summoned corpses lunged forward, weapons raised, but the fog swallowed them whole. Verrowe was gone. Only the whisper of his voice remained in the air, like a curse carved into the wind. "You don't have long, Lestat. I can wait. I have all eternity. You do not. So come find me, if you dare." A low, echoing laugh drifted on the wind, fading into the ever-turning mist. Stephen stood still, fists clenched at his sides. He had been played. He couldn't leave this place, not without Verrowe's knowledge, and every breath, every heartbeat he lingered, weakened him further. The power of Necros was within him, but even that had limits here, in a world stitched from stolen souls. There was no choice now. He would have to hunt Verrowe in the twisted depths of the soul-thin realm. He would have to track the architect of this decaying prison, force him to reveal the secrets of its construction, and find a way to sever its grip before it consumed him completely. Stephen took a step forward into the fog. The game had changed. Continued in part 2.